Network Your Futures Incorporated is currently located on premise in a data center, and they are seeking to move into the cloud in a new AWS account. They have asked us to create new user accounts for all 50 of their tech team members. We've already gone ahead and created the groups ahead of time to make things a little bit easy, but they've also asked that we can create a customized script that will help make the user account creation process a little bit easier for them and their staff. But they've also asked that we ensure that security best practices are maintained. Their organization has one hard requirement, and that's to ensure that all user accounts have passwords that meet this minimum complexity. They must be at least 16 characters, and they must also include at least one number and one special character. They've also asked that any other security best practices within the industry be adhered to. So we're going to do a few things to ramp up their security posture, and we'll do that in part 2. In most customer engagements, at a minimum, there's going to be a validation and reporting done at the conclusion of any project. For this small engagement, they've simply asked that we provide a brief report on the actions that we took to meet each of these requirements. So we'll touch on that at the conclusion of this project. So let's head on over to the AWS console and again, get logged into your very own account. And from the home screen, if you've already visited IAM service, which we have, you could click right here. But again, recall at any time you can search any keyword in the search bar up top, and you can get to the IAM dashboard from there as well. The first thing that we want to do is ensure that the 4 groups are created and be cognizant of what those names are. So let's click on user groups. So we're good to go there. The HR manager for their company has already sent over a spreadsheet containing information about all 50 tech team members. So let's go ahead and open that spreadsheet. This is what it looks like. And so let's go ahead and highlight these first 3 columns, double click the middle of the column headers so that we can get a little bit more space and zoom in a bit here. And let's see. So the first column, of course, has the name of each of those employees. Second column has their email address, and the third, the department that they work for. So to meet that first requirement and to have a script that's going to automate the user creation process, we need a way to ensure that the information contained in the spreadsheet can be read by that script. We're going to look at that script in just a few minutes, but let's think about this. Inside of the console, when we created a user, we needed to provide a username and a password. Once the user account was created, we needed to then associate it to a group. So to get the username out of one of these 2 fields, we actually don't even need this first column. So let's go ahead and delete it. And then we can actually use the first part before the @ symbol, which is a standard naming convention in most organizations. First name dot last name. So to remove that on a Windows machine, let's hit Control H and let's go ahead and type @nyf.com, which is the domain. And let's replace everywhere that is with nothing. So we'll hit replace all. And as you can see, it's replaced all 50 instances of that. Let's go ahead and right click and remove that. We don't need it to be a hyperlink. Now for the departments, we see that these actually could be used for the group, but they don't actually match up with the names that we have, but they're a little bit close. So let's see what we can do. Again, eyeballing this, DBA is a database administrator. So to make that name conform with what we have, let's go ahead and find DBA anywhere in the spreadsheet and replace it with database admin. And let's replace all. We'll do the same for architect, which is going to be our cloud admin group. Network engineer. This will be our network admin. And the last one is systems administrator. Let's go ahead and just copy this one, a little bit long. And let's go ahead and replace that with our group name, server admin. We'll hit replace all here. And as you can see, this looks pretty good now as it conforms with our naming convention. The last field that's going to be needed is a password field. So let's come here, and because we actually will end up forcing all of the users to change their password in the second part, we just need to create one that can be common amongst all users. In the real world, what we would do is we would compose an email, and in the BCC, blind carbon copy section of the email, we would actually include all 50 users there. But when they get the email, it'll look like they're the only one in the to field. So they won't even know that the other 49 users have the same password. And because we're forcing them to change their password upon the first login, this is kind of a standard method that's used within the industry as well. So let's go ahead and just come up with one. Let's say something like this. We'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and pound. And again, we will copy that to the other 49 users there. Now we've not yet looked at the script, but the reason that I will change this email field to user, this department field to group, and of course the added column that we created password is going to be because the script needs to read these in this form. So that's really all that's needed. And this could be 100 users, 500 users, 1,000. But we now know the standard of how we could do this regardless of what the ask would be. So now let's save this. Again, we need to ensure this is a CSV. Again, you'll see that there's multiple ones, Macintosh, MS-DOS, and this UTF-8, but we want the plain old comma delimited version or file extension here. And let's just add a number 2 to the end, and let's click save and head on back to the console. From the console, let's click on this icon here to launch a Cloud Shell terminal session, and let's wait for it to load. To help us out, we're going to need to install a program that's named DOS to Unix by typing, of course, this command here. And then once that's installed, when we're ready to execute the script, it's going to ensure that it can properly be read so that we don't have any problems. Next up, we're actually going to need to download that script that we're going to use here. So again, in your course notes, go ahead and type this command. And then to ensure that this has the appropriate permissions it needs to execute, let's go ahead and do a chmod plus symbol and X to allow it to execute. And then let's go ahead and give that shell script permissions to execute here. And before we get ready to run our command, let's go ahead and upload that file by clicking in Actions and, of course, upload a file. Let's go ahead and select that file, which again ended in the number 2, and we'll hit upload here. While that's loading, let's go ahead and open the IAM service in a new tab and let that load. But to ensure that this file was successfully loaded, let's do a quick ls to list the contents of the files that are in this directory. And again, this is our current present working directory. And if we do a ls-ltr, we'll get a little bit more information about the contents here. But as we can see, we have our shell script, and of course we have that CSV file, the spreadsheet, which is going to be read. Before we run this, let's do a cat on that script to take a quick peek behind. Again, we can see these are the contents here. The cat command allows us to do a quick read, which it's good to do for a short file. But the hash marks, as we can see here, these are just comments. And as we can see, the purpose of this script is to automate the creation of users in AWS from a spreadsheet. How to use it, this is going to be the command that's up next. And then we need to, of course, apply the file name that needs to be read. In the columns, this again are notes from the author telling us that user, group, and password are the required column headers in the spreadsheet. And the reason being is because, as you can see here, this script will do a while loop to read the contents of the file one row at a time. And it's going to create a user, and then it's going to ensure that the password reset is required for it. And of course, set the password that's read in from the file. And then it's going to tie that user to the group name. So all of those rows, all of those specific attributes, aka the columns for each row, that's what this is taking care of. And so this is all for one row. And then of course, since it's a loop, it'll read in the second row. And that's pretty much what this will do. And like we said, 500 or 1,000 users, this is going to help automate that process and make it so quick. So let's go ahead and clear the screen. And next up, again, it's pretty much time to execute that. But before we do, let's go ahead and click on users here so that we can see how the users are created. Again, I started out with 4 here, so I expect 54 once the process is done. You may have a different number of users if you've been getting familiar with the environment, but what we need to do now is just go ahead and type that execute command. I'm going to start a clock here and then pause the video so you don't need to sit here and watch how long it takes, but we'll see what the clock is once it's done. And let's paste this, and then I'm going to start that timer right now. So way under 5 minutes and just a little bit over 2 minutes to create 50 users. So again, imagine if we had to do this manually. Imagine that with 1,000 users, but as we can see, 54 users created, associated or tied to the correct group here. Wow, that's the power again of coming up with solutions that help make life a little bit easier, not just for ourselves, but for our team members and of course customers or clients. So this again has met the first requirement for Network Your Future Incorporated. And in the next video, we're going to do part 2 of this solution and ensure that these accounts are secured properly. And we're going to talk about that in just a few moments. So great work here, but to finish it up, I'll see you in the next video.